Well, hey everybody, we're about to get going here with our Friday live. Adrian, why don't you introduce our guest?
So we want to have a warm welcome back to our friend Julie Bratton. I know she was actually on the intro, I noticed, and we of course we always have a fun time with Julie. But Julie has over 27 years of experience in the real estate industry and specializes in all types of 1031 tax deferred exchanges. She's currently the VP of Older Public Exchange Company, where she's worked for 21 years. Older Public Exchange provides peace of mind with its expert qualified intermediary services, optimum security of funds, and superior financial strength. Please welcome our guest, Julie Bratton.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me again. It's always fun to be on the show. So yes, I'm Julie Bratton with Older Public Exchange. I specialize in 1031 exchanges. It's a way to defer paying capital gains tax. So it's a very popular tool for investors. When they sell investment property, they want to not pay taxes. So,
well, hey, let's get a little human interest here. In the mainland, we'll go straight into business here in Hawaii. We'd like to get to know you a little bit. Two questions. If not from Hawaii, where are you from? If you are, tell us where you're from. And then number two, how did you get into this business?
Well, I'm from Los Angeles originally. I'm a Valley girl. From San Francisco Valley. Don't hold that against me. And I graduated from San Diego State, and my mom took me on vacation to Maui, like mother-daughter bonding. And long story, very short, I ended up moving to Maui. And that was 32 years ago. So
local now.
Haven't looked back since.
You've been here past 20 years.
You're on Oahu, though. You're not on Maui.
I'm not on Maui, right? I 3 years on Maui, and then I moved to Oahu, and that's
clarity. And we know that sometimes, a lot of times people see our marketing everywhere in the state of Hawaii. So for clarity's sake, you can help anybody anywhere in the state of Hawaii.
Anywhere, yeah. So I cover the state of Hawaii. So yes.
Anyway. What about outside of Hawaii? If someone has a property that they need help with, that they're doing a 1031 exchange, for example, in Florida, to buy a property in Hawaii, can you help in that circumstance?
I can assist them. So you can do an exchange anywhere in the United States, in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So chances are one of the properties might not be in Hawaii.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't, yeah.
Yeah,
so absolutely.
Because it's a 1031 is a IRS code, correct?
Yes, it's federal.
Federal.
Yes. And, although you are deferring federal and state capital gains tax when you do an exchange.
All right. So.
And what about GET?
GET.
No. You have a GET or
no.
What is it? The HARPTA?
Yeah. If you're a non-resident seller selling property in Hawaii, there is a withholding called HARPTA. And you're subject to it. But if you do a 1031 exchange, you're not subject to the withholding. But people get a little taken aback by the HARPTA withholding. It's not I'm going to take your money forever. The state just wants to be covered. So, So you can get that if you overpay.
What about FERPTA?
FERPTA is for foreign sellers selling property anywhere in the U.S. And if they do an exchange, they'll be exempt. But it takes longer for that exemption to come in. So FERPTA is a little bit different. The foreign seller should be bringing in fresh cash to cover his withholding.
Yeah.
But yes, they can do exchanges also.
Before we get too deep into the lingo, we always like to communicate to the lowest common denominator for our viewers and listeners out there. So my favorite line is from the movie. I forget what the movie was. Denzel Washington. It was explain it to me like I'm an 11-year-old. So let's start from the beginning. Why was what was the purpose of the 1031 exchange?
Well, people don't want to pay capital gains tax. So they found a way to give the investor this avenue to defer paying capital gains tax and reinsert their funds into the economy, keep it going. So defer paying capital gains tax.
So creating a win-win in all essence as far as
absolutely. That's a better way to say it.
Well, I think with the IRS, it's just we want your tax money. They don't care if you're winning or not.
Well, they do want their money. So there's a lot of black and white in exchanges, but there is a lot of gray area also. So there are rules that people have to follow to make sure they have a solid, acceptable 1031 exchange.
Which is why your role and your experience is so important. If you miss one of those steps, you could be stuck paying that huge capital gains tax bill
Exactly.
So let's talk about some of those rules that need to be followed very closely.
Well, before we go down there, let's back it up a little bit. You say these are for investors. So you can't do this on your primary residence. You can only do this on investment properties, or
That's
help us
correct.
clarify? Okay.
That's correct.
So so now we clarify that from the beginning. Now let's go from there.
Wait,
I
I've
have
got one more question on that, because for a home, an owner-occupied property, if you're married, you can up to 500,000 of gain is considered tax-free. What if you have $1 million of gain? Do you have to pay the capital gains tax on the 500,000 extra, or can you do a 1031 exchange with that extra money and defer those taxes on your primary residence?
Okay, so in your example, yes, they can take up to 500,000 tax-free on a personal residence. If they make over 500,000, whatever's over and above the 500 is exposed to taxes.
So there's no way around it.
Correct. They cannot do an exchange with the remainder because it wasn't held for
still owner-occupied equity. And for clarity's sake and liability, for everybody out there, we are not providing any tax or legal advice.
Although there is a strategy for that. It's called a cash out refi. You just pull it all out, beforehand, right?
When you refi right before, right after an exchange, it could be a red flag to the IRS. So if somebody is interested in doing that, they really need to discuss the pros and cons and timing of refinancing.
Okay.
If the IRS gets a wind of that, they could look at it as a mechanism of pulling out cash and then fail, and then your exchange could fail. So that's really important.
So there's got to be a certain amount of time between the refi and
timing and intent. There's a couple of things that are really important.
Yeah.
With a refi.
Yeah.
So it is a mechanism to pull out cash, but it's.
Yeah, I don't want to go too far out.
It doesn't have to do with the exchange.
Yeah. And so I don't want to go too far out onto the weeds. I want to stick through the basics. That's the 1031. You have an investment property. You're listing it for sale, and let's start from the beginning.
Okay.
I'm thinking about selling my investment property. When should I get a hold of you?
Well, you can get a hold of me whenever you want. The sooner the better, so we can go over the rules and regulations. And if there is something funky going on in your transaction, we can uncover it early enough. So when you do get an accepted offer on the sale of your investment property, it's smooth sailing from that moment forward. So once you have an accepted offer, though, is really when the exchange company, I need to know about it. I need to get a copy of the contract and the title report because we need to draft exchange documents. It needs to be set up before the escrow closes. Because here's the black and white of exchanges. The day the escrow closes, escrow has to disperse funds. The exchanger is not allowed to touch their money, their net proceeds in an exchange. So escrow closes, those funds come to us, the exchange company, and we hold them until they're ready to buy the replacement property. And they have to do this within a specific period of time, which is really the black and white of exchanges. So the day of closing, their clock starts ticking. They have 45 days to identify in writing what they're going to buy and 180 days to close on it. So the 45 days is included in the 180. They don't get 45 and then an additional 180. So in 45 days in this market has been very stressful for a lot of people because they have to list what they think they're going to buy in the first 45 days. So they can make as many changes as they want in the 45 days, but they cannot make any changes to their list after their 45 days.
And how many properties, Julie, are they allowed to list on, their intention?
Their identification notice. There's two ways to identify. The first way, the most common way, is the 3 property rule, where they can identify up to 3 properties. They might only want to buy one, but some people put more than one down just for backup, just in case. But the 3 property rule is for up to 3 properties. If they want to identify 4 properties or more, they can, but that immediately bumps them into what we call the 200% rule. So let's say they wanted to list 4, 5, or 6 properties. They can, but the fair market value of the entire list that they identify combined cannot exceed double of what they sell or sold their relinquished property for. example, if they sell something for $1 million and they want to identify 4 properties or more, they can, but the fair market value of that entire list combined could not exceed 1 penny over 2 million. They can't go outside and identify an entire neighborhood and then pick one later.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is where the 200% rule comes in.
And then also, like, if someone wanted to exchange maybe like a one single family home for 3 or 4 condos, yes, right? As long as
absolutely
it has to just make sense as far as that rule, the double.
As long as they identified it properly and they can and they can close in their 180 days, they're fine.
Yeah,
so people use exchanges for estate planning. That's a perfect thing. They might want to get out of a larger building and do some estate planning and buy, one single family for each kid.
Well, we find that a lot of wealthy people, this is how they build wealth. So double check my banner. Am I correct? 40 days to identify, 180 days to close?
Yes, but let me clarify this too. It's every day counts. It's calendar days. So 45 days lands on Sunday. I still need your identification notice on Sunday. If your 180 days happens to land on Christmas or King Kamehameha Day, you need to close on the 179th day.
Mm-hmm. So plan accordingly. Know your deeds.
Exactly. I think that really comes in play when people are buying new construction or new projects. If the developer needs an extension after your 180th day, you don't get one. You'd have a failed exchange.
IRS doesn't they don't cut you slack, the IRS?
No extensions. Surprise.
No. Okay. We go back to what you said in the beginning. It's pretty black and white.
The time frames and identifying timely and properly are very black and white.
So we've talked to you before, and I think one of your key pieces of advice is for people to do it early and often and not wait till the sign is up in front of the yard and then you're scrambling and you're in escrow.
Yes, I do think that people, especially nowadays in this market, the last couple of years, and even still today, even though our interest rates are going up a little bit, still should start shopping early for a replacement property. Inventory is low or tight, and it's just been hard for people to get investment properties in 45 days.
Yeah.
That's been the most stressful part. So shop early or start looking around early to weed through the areas, the properties, the projects, the islands, the states you like and you don't like. So when you're in your 45 days, you're feeling a lot more comfortable about what you're going to buy or what you think you're going to buy.
So with the 1031 exchange, it's like kind property.
Yes.
So let's go into some examples of that. What does that mean?
Okay, that is a great question. So like kind is a very misunderstood term. I mean, people really take it for what it sounds like. Condo for condo, single family for single family, vacant land for vacant land. And although all of those examples are correct and fine, it's really any combination of real property. So you can sell a condo and buy a single family home. You can sell a commercial building and buy a condo. As long as it's real property and you are holding it for investment or for productive use in a business or trade, it's allowable. So example, you cannot go out and buy a boat. A boat is personal property. So it's got to be real property.
What about a T-Rex skeleton?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
I will
not let you put that on the ID notice. Oh, one side note, since we are talking about properties in Hawaii, about like kind. If you or anybody you know is thinking about selling or buying leasehold property, leasehold property has to have 30 years or more remaining on the lease to qualify for an exchange.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so that's 30 years or more.
Another new little nugget that I was not aware of. 30 years.
It's really important because I had recently somebody identify the property and he did it timely and it was after the 45 days. And then I see the contract after the 45 days and it had less than 30 years on it. And he couldn't use it. And he didn't identify any backups and he had no idea.
Have you done a
well, I think that leads into like always having a backup. And one of the other things that that Attilio and I and our team have specialized in is the DST, where that is a nice little.
Have you done a 1031? Have you done a 1031 into a DST?
Oh, many, many times. I'm actually having some people end up selling their DST or have been forced to sell their DST and get back into real estate.
Yes.
So yes, the DSTs are quite popular right now because they are a good solution for many people.
Yeah. So you've done it both ways, from the DST into real property, from the real property into a DST. And Adrian, why don't you? People are hearing another acronym, and we're not in the military, so we need to explain this acronym.
So it's a Delaware Statutory Trust. We actually have a whole page on our website, teamlally.com/DST, about this particular type of property or ownership that will suffice for the 1031 exchange ruling. So it's basically a fractional ownership for accredited investors to own a small percentage of, so for example, I own a very small percentage of a storage unit facility that spans across 4 different states. And I did a 1031 exchange from my Florida property into the storage unit facility. And I didn't even need to get qualified. There was no credit qualifications, which was great. And it doesn't show up on my credit as a debt. So there's definitely some benefits to it. However, I can't sell out of my DST until the whole group is ready to sell. So it could be 6, 7, 8 years. But in the meantime, I'm getting an 8% cap rate. So it's
all right. So
no.
We just had a viewer come in with a question. What kind of costs are we looking at?
Foreign exchange. I usually ask how much you're selling the relinquished property for. So it's either $950, $1,250, or $1,500 to set it up. And each replacement property you buy, it's $575. So you pay as you go. So for example, if you don't buy anything, obviously we're not going to charge you the $575.
Yeah. We're talking, realistically, we're talking pennies to the dollars with how much money is involved in these transactions.
Right. So when you do an exchange, yes, we're holding money, but I think a lot of people think that's all that we do. But there is an enormous amount of orchestration that goes on in an exchange. It starts with, the consultation and reviewing contracts and title reports and entity docs and closing statements, coordination with escrow. That's just on the sale. Yep. And then we're holding the funds. We're reviewing the identification notices. We're keeping you up on the timelines. And then you have the replacement property documentation that we also have to draft and review, contracts, title reports, closing statements. So it's a big orchestration.
It's a lot.
So before we wrap this up, I want you to quickly touch on something we don't really hear too much about it because I know it's expensive to do, but it is possible. Can you just touch on what is the reverse exchange?
Sure.
Why would someone do that?
Okay. A reverse exchange. So a regular exchange, which we just discussed a minute ago, which is the most common exchange and the least expensive exchange, if that registers with you. That's sell first and then buy. But let's say you're out there and you find a property that's to die for and you have to have it and you haven't sold your relinquished property for. There is a reverse exchange where you can buy first and then sell. Remember, in a regular exchange, the money that I'm holding is the down payment for the new property. If you have to buy first, you're missing that down payment. So there is a minimum cash requirement down when you do a reverse exchange. The minimum cash would be what you anticipate netting from your sale. So as long as you can do that, you can do a reverse exchange. So what happens is the time frames are in reverse as well. You'll have 180 days to sell that relinquished property. You're right. It's a lot to get into, but there is a reverse exchange. So if you do find something that you really want, let's talk about if it's something for you.
I think you guys should change the name to that. I think you should call it the Oops Exchange. Oops, we forgot to do it. We forgot to identify the property.
I think it's not that you forget to identify. I think sometimes it's just circumstantial. Let's say you had it all lined up. You had a regular exchange, sell first and then buy. All the stars were lining up. And then let's say the buyer of your relinquished property falls out of escrow for some reason.
Yeah.
And then now close on your relinquished property and you have to put it on the market. So that is like a circumstantial reverse exchange that you just end up having to do. And then there's the good one that you're walking down the street or someone enters into an open house and says, oh my gosh, I love this. I have to have it. How can I do it? Well,
how we learned about it was through a real life situation. I remember talking about it. We had a client we listed the home for sale. While we had the home listed for sale, we were helping them identify properties. They found something that they really, 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 really wanted and thought, okay, we'll just get that going. and didn't realize that their list side was taking so long, but they wanted to close on the identified property and get going. So they made that decision, and we said you could do a reverse. In the real life situation, though, the thing that made them decide not to do it, the cost is quite different. Can you talk about that real quick before we wrap it? Yeah.
So I gave you the cost of the regular exchange. The reverse exchange starts at $6,500 to do, plus the extra escrow and title, because we have to take title to one of the properties. But the reason why it's more expensive is we're taking title to a property we know nothing about.
Yes.
We put it into an LLC that we pay state and federal taxes on. We need to be added on as additionally insured. There's an extra escrow involved. So the plot really thickens on a reverse exchange. That's why it's more expensive. And I also like to point out, when people are contemplating or they're looking at the fee, like, of course, from a fee perspective, you want to do it in the right order, sell first and then buy. But then I ask them, what is your gain on the property you're selling?
Yeah.
$6,500 could be a drop in the bucket compared to what they're going to pay in taxes. And if this property is really for them and it's to die for and they have to have it, then they'll end up looking at it that way.
And it's a tax write-off. It's
an allowable expense.
Mm-hmm.
But some people are just flat out fee driven, and I get that. But when you put it in perspective that way, at least they know what their options are. So don't not consider it just because of that. Yeah.
We prefer not to work with McDonald's customers. We'd rather work with Teddy's Burgers customers.
Yeah.
And my kids are big fans of Teddy Burgers. And it's ironic being a vegetarian, but they do have a Beyond Burger. And what I notice is the sign on the wall at Teddy's. We are not going to make it fast, but it's going to be good. And so McDonald's, you have no expectation that it's going to be good, but it's cheap and fast. So I think a better way to go and enjoy life is to not be so fee oriented, but be, the end result, which is trying to save you on taxes. Because if somebody's owns a property, let's say it sells for $1 million free and clear, and they got $1 million worth of equity. Correct me if I'm wrong, if you guys know or you don't, and I won't hold you to it. But whatever your tax rate is when you go to file and you have no way of deferring that capital gains, that's the rate you're paying on that $1 million. And if it's 20%, that's $200,000.
And I need to hop off, so I'm going to let you guys wrap this up, and I will see you at the office later.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Hi, great to see you.
Julie, if you could give one major piece of advice that you would give to someone looking at a Turn 31 exchange, and this is coming from you doing it for 21 plus years, and it's like the biggest mistake that people make, what would it be?
Well, there's two. I really think that people need to start shopping a little early about, once they start thinking about listing a property, or they're just about to sell it, or it's going to go in that escrow, they really need to start shopping. And it's an investment property. I mean, I understand if you're going to live in it eventually, that you're a little bit picky, but some people really feel that they're going to be stuck with what they buy.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't need to be that emotionally attached. It's an investment property. So you're not stuck with what you buy. I mean, I would never say buy a piece of junk, but if you have to make a lateral move just to defer paying capital gains tax, do it. And then hold on to it for, as long as you can. The longer, the better. You can always sell it and do an exchange into something else when things calm down. But I think people really are looking for perfect. And it would be great if you can find it, but just shop early so you can get a little of that angst off the table. And talk to your CPA. If you're thinking about doing an exchange or selling any property, I think you should always talk to your CPA about what you're doing and why you're doing it. So if they have some 2 cents that you didn't think about previously, it would be really, really helpful.
If I had to recap what you were saying, then start early. Number 2, don't feel that you're stuck into something. And then probably number 3, what you said right at the end is make sure that you put together your team of consultants, your listing agent that knows what the heck they're doing, your CPAs that can talk about the taxes, and then you all. Are you guys referred to sometimes as intermediaries?
Yeah, so we're called a lot of things. Intermediary,
facilitator. Not late for dinner.
Wait. Facilitator, intermediary, QI, which is short for qualified intermediary, 1031 girl. There's a lot of, but yes, we are.
At the end of the day, it's 1031 is a tax code. If you know the government, they don't make things easy. I'd rather pay somebody to help me navigate the IRS code to make sure I don't get tripped up and owe hundreds of thousands of dollars in capital gains for the minor amount that you guys charge for all the work you do. Um, uh, here's the one last one. I promise it's the last question. What's the most weirdest thing that you've had somebody do a 1031 into?
Oh gosh, it was a long
Or
time
funny?
ago. I had somebody sell a property. This was so many years ago, and they bought billboards.
They bought what?
Billboards.
Billboards.
Yeah, it was like property. I feel like it was in Texas somewhere.
Yeah. They're
Something
like,
very
okay.
weird.
So
And I also had somebody identify like 24 properties. And I said, hey, you're over identified and you have to buy all of these, or you can't do it, or 95% of them. And he did. And I always wondered did he like build Disneyland on this area? He was in one of those states that we would never go visit. I always just wondered what he did with all of that land. But,
wow. Okay. Well, thanks so much.
Everybody has a story, but the rules are still the same. So, sometimes I have to listen to all of this to make sure you're on the right track. And of course, you need tax advice. CPA.
Is this a good number to reach
like
you at?
Antonio said, we don't give tax advice. We can't. There's no way we would ever know what your financial situation is in its entirety. We are just here to guide you.
Focus on the 1031. Yeah. Is this the best number to reach you at, for you guys if they want to get?
Yes, that's my office, and you put my website up there a minute ago. Yep. Yeah, call or email anytime with your questions. We're happy to answer them. And there's a lot of exchanges going on. A lot of investors are moving their money, and inventory is tight. So stay focused, look around for what you're going to buy so you don't get stuck in the very stressful 45-day deadline. Like on the 44th day, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. So
do you have a Christmas song on the 45th day of my no,
but that's a really good idea. That is a good idea.
Put the whole commercial to on the first day of my exchange. I don't wait till the. So we're going to take us out with our intro video that we came in with. And if you want to just stay on for a second, we'll go ahead and hang tight with me. But thanks so much for your time and being on the show. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Anytime.
Okay.